Okay, let's call this meeting of the Haysville Planning Commission to order. The first item of business is a roll call.
Welch,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Coleman,
Here.
Randall,
Here.
Asia,
Here.
Weathington,
We're here.
Chatwell,
Here.
Green, Holland,
Here.
Burden, Stock,
Here.
Item 3, presentation and approval of minutes of January 24th, 2019.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion and second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Abstentions. Item 4, new business, case A0 AOI CU 01 2019, conditional use permit via application for recommendation to the Metro Area Planning Department for a group boarding home of the property legally described as, I'm not going to read that, more commonly known as 8361 South Hydraulic. Dave, you're out. Would you like to present this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be here. My name is Dave Yearout. I'm with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. One minor change on your agenda. This is actually the opportunity for Haysville to make a recommendation or comment, review and comment to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, because they are the ones that will actually hold the public hearing.
That's how the
I know.
item is.
Yeah, it's okay.
To make a
I just want to make
recommendation-
sure everybody understands that
To the commission,
your
not the
comment
department.
is actually
Yes.
coming to the planning commission, because the staff role is simply to process the application. We prepared a staff report that will go to the planning commission. Before I get into the details of this application, I do want to put a statement on the record, and this just materialized late this afternoon, so there's no one else here that knows about this. The applicant's agent, an attorney, has requested officially on behalf of the applicant that the item be deferred from the March 7th Planning Commission meeting at the Planning Commission, at the Wichita-Sedgwick County Planning Commission. They're requesting a deferral until April 18th in order to have time to address issues outlined in the staff report and some history on the property. And so there will be new notices be sent out to everyone. Those will be prepared and probably go out Monday, informing everyone that the public hearing that was scheduled for a week from today by the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, this item will be deferred and there will not be a public hearing. We will give a new notice on everyone officially when that day will occur. So I wonder, and I know most of the people here tonight are concerned with that case, but I do want to make that aware to the audience that that case will be deferred.
So is there any reason for us to not consider and provide a recommendation based on what's in front of us here?
Well, because this falls within Haysville's area of influence, the city will be provided the opportunity to review and comment on the application. It's just a matter that it will now be heard in April. That's up to you guys whether or not you want to move forward on this case tonight.
Okay.
I would presume that we're going to proceed because you have an audience here and they should at least hear the substance of what's going on. As outlined in the application material that you have in the staff report, this is a request submitted by Andrea Henschel, requesting in the Sedgwick County zoning regulations, which are Sedgwick County zoning regulations, what is known as a group residence, limited. The application and the applicant indicated but she is actually requesting from the Department of Children and Families is classified under their terminology as a group boarding home. And the staff report talks about that. It's classified as a group residence limited in the county's regulations because that's how the term is defined within the document itself. This is a request to convert the property that the applicant owns at 8361 South Hydraulic on a 5-acre tract from a single-family home to the use of the group boarding home. Provided, and I think you have copies of this, there was a business plan that was on record that the applicant had prepared ahead of, I think, the time that she submitted the initial application to DCF. There were subsequent inspections done through the State Fire Marshal's office that resulted in the classification of the property such that the occupancy load that was at least determined by the State Fire Marshal's office was limited to a total of 7 people. The business plan indicated, and there was discussion within the documentation, that the intent was to house teenage boys through the foster care program into this facility. There would be a full-time person on staff that would be there throughout the day, which puts it to a total of 7 people, and that's why it's classified the way that it is within DCF and also under the county's regulations. I noted in the staff report there were a number of issues that we were made aware of regarding this particular home in the past, primarily from major flooding problems in the basement coming from high groundwater in that area that had at point actually seriously caused problems within the structure. We heard about this from neighbors. We also heard about from officials throughout the county. At one point, the previous owner had even asked the county to acquire the property or to help pay for the costs to modify the home to make the problem with flooding go away. Through the Wichita Area Builders Association, there was an actual group that went to and prepared a report after a full inspection of the home, and there was a copy of a 2-page report identifying what should be done. That was also attached and made a copy and an attachment to the overall staff report. The short version of what staff has recommended, and when this goes forward, based on what we know at the time the application was prepared, was to recommend a denial of this request and that's outlined in the staff report, belief that the home was not appropriate for conversion into this type of a use, particularly given the fact that there had not been modifications made to the home as recommended by the Builders Association. We do go on to say that if the Planning Commission and/or the county is of a mind to approve the request, there are recommendations of conditions that would be attached, beginning with a request or recommendation that the home be modified based upon the recommendations outlined by the Builders Association, and obviously compliance with all subsequent applicable federal, local, and state rules and regulations. In the discussion that's come forward, I know there have been a lot of questions raised about the conditions on the existing property and home with respect to the fact that it's served by an on-site water and on-site wastewater system. And we wanted to put on the record that if this was to ever be recommended for approval, all those systems would have to be brought up to current standards, the sanitation code for water and sewer or on-site systems, which could very well mean, as a result, modifications to the existing system. So any questions regarding whether or not that's adequate, those would all be addressed at the time a use application was made to change the use of the property from single family to the business use. The same would apply with respect to building code requirements and the modifications made within the home itself in converting it from a single family home to what would be classified, at least as I understand it, in talking with the Metropolitan Area Building Commission or department, that it would classify it differently, and there would be certain things would have to be done within the home to bring it up to building code standards. So with that, all the other information you have before you, I would just be happy to answer any questions the Planning Commission may have, and then I'll let you decide how you want to handle it from there.
Any questions, Mr. You're out?
Yes, I have a question. There are estimates here for redoing this property dated in 2017. Is this still in effect? Is it still good? And will it be done according to these estimates?
Well, those were estimates that were provided for documentation that had been received at one point by other county officials, but those were just estimates to the previous owner. Whether or not that would be applicable still today or not, I have no clue. I think that was provided as additional documentation to show the depth and breadth to which there had been some evaluations done a couple of years ago about what it meant. Because at that time, there had been a request made, as I had been told, because it was all before I went to work with the county and city and MAPD, that all resulted in a request being made by, I think, the previous owner to the Board of County Commissioners to assist in paying for the modifications that were outlined by WABA to the home. And so it was part of the record that they had of what had been presented as estimates at that time. But the understanding I've been told is that there was not the vote for the county to acquire or to assist in modifications of the home, so nothing else was done.
One more question. Who's the actual owner at this time?
The applicant is the current owner of the property,
Who is,
Mrs. Hanschel.
pardon me?
Mrs. Hanschel and her husband.
All right.
The Henschels are the owners of record. Yeah.
I have a question. On the condition of the property, the home, do you know if it has been inspected for black mold?
No,
It has not, or you don't know?
I do not know.
And is there any kind of safe room or shelter, storm shelter on property?
Beyond the basement, no.
Okay,
The
Nothing that I
basement
know of.
is recommended to be converted into a crawl space, correct?
right.
The recommendation from WABA is for the basement to be filled and no longer used as a basement structure.
So
yes.
would that be part of your additional recommendation to provide some sort of storm shelter on the property?
We've not gotten that far.
Okay.
Would that typically fall under building code?
Any modifications to the structure would, so if there was an attempt made to convert that, because if you read the WABA recommendation, there were other structure modifications to support the structure as well, so it would require a building permit.
Is the property, it's not currently occupied, right?
I believe the
It is
applicant is
occupied?
living in it as a single-family home now.
Is it listed for sale? At
Not that I'm
present?
aware
It's
of.
not. Has it been recently?
That I don't know.
We don't know.
Any other questions, Mr. Yearout? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
The applicant or any other representative here wishes to speak?
Thank you. My name is Bob Kirkendall. I am a resident of Haysville, live at 519 Chuck Kerr Circle, which is approximately a mile from where this residence is. And I am representing Andrea Henschel, who is the owner of the property. And today we did request a continuance of the hearing before the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission so that we can address some of the groundwater concerns that were raised by the county. And we intend to address those. And we hope to assure that those are taken care of, or if not, then we'll have to make other arrangements with respect to the property. What we want here, what we are concerned about here tonight is something other than, I believe, the condition of the property, because the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission is well aware of those issues and has taken lead on those issues. I believe that it's really this Planning Commission's board to look at this property and see whether the proposed use is something that is consistent with Haysville's plan for the development of its community and for this neighborhood. Now, your role in this is a little different than normal because it's an advisory role to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. But you do have a set of criteria that you use when you evaluate conditional use applications for purposes of your code. We believe those same criteria should be applied here, And you should evaluate this application under those criteria. And those criteria are found at, I believe it is 702D of your code. And it deals with matters such as access and traffic load and/or flow. Again, this use will not measurably increase access, traffic load, or flow with respect to the use of this property. Number 2 is noise, light, and odor. There's no effect on that. Number 3 is screening. No screening is necessary here. The house itself will not change appearances. Parking, there's no need for additional parking. People will not be coming and going with greater frequency than you would expect under a single-family home. Services, it is currently served by a water system and septic system, and those will be, those are working now and will be certainly kept in working order. Number 6 is public health and safety. And we would submit that there is no change in public health and safety. What we are talking about is not housing delinquents, not housing criminals, not housing people referred from juvenile justice system. What we are talking about is housing a handful of people who had the misfortune of choosing the wrong parents, people who are suffering from abuse and neglect and need some secure place to stay. And Ms. Henschel is a social worker. She's an educated as a social worker. She knows what she's doing. She's been acting as a foster mother for a number of years. And she is trained and able to handle these people who need a place to stay. Now, Haysville is a welcoming community. It's a safe community. And these children need some place like this in order to have the stability that they need to get back on their feet. Number 7 is adequacy of facility and lot size. In terms of adequacy facility, the facility has been inspected by the state, and it has been found to be appropriate by the state for housing 7 people. It will continue to be periodically inspected by the state, and the state is aware of what's going on there, and will continue to keep an eye to make sure that it continues to be adequate by the state. Ms. Henschel, in preparation for this hearing, had the home inspected to make sure that there was no problem. The home inspector looked around and prepared a report, and he found no evidence of black mold, no problems with any kind of mold on the property or problems in the basement, which has been cleared out and is now just an empty area. Basically, the home inspector found nothing that created any kind of a safety problem, and neither did the state. Signs, there will not be signs. Review by fire marshal. Again, the fire marshal at the state level has reviewed the property. There's no problem there. Time limitation, sunset, and other considerations is appropriate. Those factors really do not play here. In all the criteria that are applicable to a decision on a conditional use favor granting this permit. The public favors granting this permit. These services are necessary.
Hey, come on. You have your chance to speak when he's done. Otherwise, we'll ask you to be removed.
The problem is here is that the public requires these kind of facilities. And what we've got here is a case of NIMBY. which is not in my backyard. Nobody wants these facilities around them. But again, I think most of the fear is fear because they don't understand what this facility is. It's for temporary housing of neglected and abused teenagers, people that are going to be moving in and staying for a limited period of time typically until they can be reacquainted with their, or reintegrated back into their family. And these type of people, or these type of facilities are necessary. Now, we know that there are people who don't want this facility here. But simply because the facility is unpopular, that alone is not sufficient justification to deny a conditional use. If you want a case from the Kansas Supreme Court, I can tell you a case, but what that case held was neighborhood objections are not legally sufficient to deny use or even conditional uses of land. It can be a consideration, certainly, but zoning is not to be based upon a plebiscite of the neighbors. And although their wishes are to be considered, the final ruling is to be governed by considerations of the benefit or harm involved to the community at large. These are our kids that need housing, and Andrea is providing these people with housing. It is this community that needs, this community as a whole, that needs someplace for this. With that, I will answer any questions, or Andrea can answer any questions about this facility. But what we're talking about here is limited to 7 youths who are teenagers, who will be in and out. Typically, there will not be 7 people there, because there will be absences with people moving in and out. We are not talking about anything that is going to change the character or affect the neighbors in any way.
Any questions for Mr. Kirkendall?
I have a question.
I have,
Sure.
So it's my understanding that for this conditional use, to be qualified as a group home, 5 to 10 children,
Yes.
that qualifies.
Well, yeah, because, if you have more than 5,
More than
people.
10, it goes to a
mo-
different.
more than 5, you've got to be qualified as a group home.
Okay, so,
And she can have 7, according to the state.
so she could have up to 4 children in this residence and just be a foster parent,
Yes,
and they would filter in and out just as a foster parent.
yes. So what we're talking about are 2 additional.
Well, that would be 3. Right. 4 to 7,
4.
3.
Yeah.
3.
Okay.
How many children are currently in the home?
2 right now, and I'm getting another one tonight, so there'll be 3.
And these are long-term placements, or are these emergency situations?
They're from emergency, they could be long-term placements. I've had 2 of them for a little over a month. So I had another boy for about 2 months.
so that was one of my questions as well, was you used the phrase temporary housing. We've also utilized the phrase of boarding facility. So do you have a definition for what defines the time frame for which you might house an individual? From as little to as much, and it can be an estimate, I understand. Meaning
It's
like-
really hard to say.
Sure.
There's some kids that I've had one night. There's some kids that I've had 2 months. There's some kids that stay for a year.
Okay.
So it's really hard to say how long they will
So
stay.
the timeframe would be open-ended,
Yes.
probably more appropriately to be categorized.
It would be.
Okay, thank you.
So the issue is you want to go from a limit of 4 up to 7, and you think that there's a need for that?
Yes, I know there's a need
Okay.
for it.
That's why you're here That's what necessitated all of this?
Right. I work for a foster care agency, and so I see the kids coming in every day.
Thank you.
So, all the questions? Or I
If
don't-
if anybody else has questions?
I have one more. So your kids will specifically be of what ages?
They will be between the ages of 13 and 18.
So you don't ever take younger children?
I don't. No, teenagers are really hard to place.
Yeah.
So, because everybody just thinks that they're delinquents, but they're not.
Do you have any partnership with the Wichita Children's Home
I don't.
at present? Any work with them, or the Gerard House?
I do not.
What agency? I know it was in here. What agency are you?
I'm through Ember Hope right now, and I'm trying to license through the state of Kansas.
Was that, what was that before it was Ember Hope?
It was Youthville.
Yes. Okay.
And you've done this in your application, is that 10 years total?
I have
approximately?
been working as a social worker for 12 years,
Okay,
and I've been doing foster care for 1 year.
okay. And as a social worker, always licensed in the state of Kansas?
Yes.
Have you maintained your licensure for
Yes.
that entire time,
No.
uninterrupted?
No, I wasn't licensed for 10 years. I just got licensed about a year ago, but I've been working in the foster care field in the social work, and I wasn't a licensed social worker during that whole 12 years.
Any
How
other
long,
questions?
how long have you been doing this in this property?
Foster care?
Yeah.
Since August of last year. I've had between 1 and 4 kids pretty much every night.
At this same property?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
And how, I'm sorry.
Just
so are
take
we,
turns.
I'm sorry.
Just take turns.
Are we acting then are we approving something that you've been doing in the past? Or are we approving so that you can go from 4 to 7?
4 to 7.
Yes.
It's okay right now for you to do 4. You can continue 4 and you don't have to come to us.
Right, I can, but I want to do more. I bought this property to do a group home in. That was, I have another home that I'm planning on moving back to after I get this going. I don't know. But what my plan is, it's going to be a foster home. My family is going to run it. I'm going to run it. It will be, there will be 24-hour care. I will run it. My son is here. He's going to help me.
You understand?
Take your time.
So,
How long have you lived at this property?
since July. July 23rd is when we closed on it, and I moved in that day.
Any other questions?
Was the home vacant before you moved in?
No, they were living there until the day I moved. I wrote up something that I would like to read, but I don't know if I'll be able to make it through it. Is it okay if somebody else reads it for me?
That's fine.
Do you want to read it?
Oh, do we need a volunteer to read it?
I,
Yeah. You can.
Evening, everybody.
Before you start, would you state your name for the record?
Sean Smith.
Thank you.
On behalf of Andrea Henschel, hello, my name is Andrea Henschel. I'm a licensed bachelor level social worker. I've been employed in the foster care field for the last 12 years, providing assistance to those in need, as has always been my passion and goal. A goal I have always had is to open up a group home for foster children. I was licensed in January of 2018 to provide foster care in a previous home where I had between 1 and 4 children each day for emergency placements. Some of the children stayed with me for one night and some stayed for months. I then purchased the home on South Hydraulic and began my pursuit of licensing this resident as a foster care group boarding home. I closed on the home August of 2018 and immediately moved in and began the licensing process through a foster care agency to begin taking children again, while also working on the requirements for the state to license as a group home. I was granted my license in August 2018 for up to 4 children ages birth to 18. My own children, boys ages 20, 17, 5, and daughter who was 3, resided in the same home as these children. The younger children, now ages 7 and 4, reside in my home with various youth I've had since August of 2018. The youth were great with my kids. There have never been any concerns. A few longer-term placement children began calling me mom, and the children, their brothers and sisters. They were comfortable in the home and felt love from our home and our family. The children who I provide care for are in the foster care system due to no fault of their own. They were abused and neglected by their parents. They are not troubled teens or high-risk teens or juvenile delinquents like some of you may think. They are teens who are without a family, a loving environment, and a place to call home. I've had both teen boys and teen girls in a home for short stays as well as those that have stayed for months or even longer. Some reasons the children would leave the home permanently would be to reintegration with their parents, going to an independent living program, or aging out of the system. Once the group home is open, I will be licensed for up to 7 teens to reside in the home for full-time placement. There are 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms in the home. There will be 2 teen boys in 2 of the rooms and 3 boys in the master bedroom. I will be providing full-time care to the youth in the group home. My son Nathan and my mother Karen and 2 nieces will assist as needed. I will have a small amount of hired staff who will fill in as well. The plan for this group home is to be more of a family environment rather than a facility with random working staff. The children will be supervised 100% of the time by a qualified adult who has passed background tests, fingerprints, and required trainings. The adult caring for the children will never leave them alone and will never be sleeping during the night hours. There will be door and window alarms to prevent the children from leaving the home undetected by staff. Youth will never be allowed to be outside the home for any reason without supervision of staff. There will be a security camera system, both inside and outside of the home, to record all activities. In my experience with children in my care over the last year, I have never been disrespected by any of them, and they have never left the home without my knowledge. The youth are all very appreciative of the help I am providing to them and thank me in response. I have letters from previous neighbors at my other home that can attest to the fact that they never had any issues with the children in my care. On any day of the week, there are numerous children without long-term placements or any other option. The opening of the home will allow for some of those children to find long-term placement. They will have the availability needed to continue with their education, and they will be able to get the needed medical, dental, and vision appointments for their health and well-being. They will have responsibilities each day and be required to keep their rooms clean, do homework, and other chores as assigned. They will have a structured routine of what their day will look like, including when they will wake up, have breakfast, who will shower mornings and who will shower evenings, and assigned laundry days. Some of the youth may have employment and bank accounts for savings. There will be resources for the children, including in-house therapy, an on-call nurse practitioner who can assist in non-life-threatening emergencies, including fevers, colds, infections, prescribing medications, and completing health assessments. Over the last week, I have heard numerous concerns regarding opening of the group home. I've heard that my basement is not safe and should be filled in with sand or other measures taken to prevent the flooding from reoccurring. When I purchased the home, I was told the basement has flooded 3 times in 37 years. The previous owner from the last flood failed to clean the basement and allowed mold to grow. Shortly after moving into the home, all the drywall was removed from the basements, as well as any other surface that might be a health or safety concern, and is now just studs. A home inspector came onto the property 2/26/19 and reported there are no safety concerns in the home stated the home is livable. A keyed lock will be installed on the door leading to the basement, and only approved adults will have access to this key. A great part of my childhood was growing up in a home that flooded. A great part of my childhood growing up in a home that flooded when heavy rains came. In that situation, we never thought the solution was to fill the basement. The pumps worked to get the water out of the basement. We had fans to help dry out the water before mold settled in. It's not a huge concern if you take care of the issue when it occurs. If the basement If the basement would have been properly prepared and cleaned out by the previous owners, there would not have been a health issue due to the mold. I've been told there are numerous neighbors whose basements have also flooded. I would have to assume not one of my neighbors filled their basements in with sand just because it floods. Instead, I was told that they cleaned up the water and mess and either left it as is unfinished or they have remodeled it, making it livable again. I've also heard concerns regarding the children leaving the home and stealing neighbors' property. This concern is truly unfounded. There's a huge misconception regarding children in foster care as being delinquents. The majority of children who are in care is a direct result of the choices their parents make by abusing or neglecting them, which in turn brings them into custody to keep them safe while their parents work on what the issues is to get them back home. I hope I have answered questions with my statement this evening. Rather than judging the children in foster care, maybe we can take the time to get to know them and volunteer or even become a mentor. They are in need of love and attention, just like those children who are not in foster care. These kids have had a rough time and just want some stability and a sense of belonging.
Thank you. Any more questions? Anybody else here speak in favor of? I have over 20 speaking cards. I would ask you, if you are all from the same neighborhood, to elect a spokesman. If someone before you speaks and covers your issue significantly, let me get through this. We don't want to hear the same thing 21 times, so we are listening. So in the interest of getting out of here before midnight, if we could elect maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people, and then if your issue isn't covered, you can come up.
We've all had the other issues, so.
If you have a unique issue that isn't covered, you're more than welcome to speak. I just don't want to hear the same thing 24 times. Okay? We've got all the cards. I'm not going to just pick one. I think whoever wants to go first can go first, and we can go orderly after that.
Why don't I go first? I got just a few things, and then, so my name's Jeff Collins. I'm at 1407 East 82nd. I'm about a block and a half from the residence. I moved here a while back from the city to basically get away from all the noise and give myself a little room and be in a place where, you know, my family could walk out on the streets and feel safe, and I wouldn't have to keep an eye on them every second. And, you know, just like I grew up when I was little. The world's changed, and I think everybody recognizes that. And this place seemed like a really nice neighborhood to me, all residential. We drove the neighborhood quite a bit before we even put a bid on the house. Actually got stopped by some of the neighbors asking, you know, because they recognized the car driving by, just to see, you know, what we were up to, and making sure that we weren't, you know, looking for trouble in the neighborhood. And so it seemed like a very safe place to move and grow my family. And it is all residential. So I could sit here and cite a bunch of reasons why I don't think, you know, we should allow this, but there's people behind me that can articulate that a whole lot better than I can. But I think the primary reason for me is, you know, this is an all residential neighborhood, and I don't understand how we can just make a decision to go make one house that's been residential and go turn it into a commercial property, so that we can start running a business there. This business or any other business. I think it's heading in a direction that I didn't wish for my neighborhood, and I'm certainly thinking that they wouldn't want their neighborhood either. And I think if anybody in this room asked themselves, including yourself, if this is something that you would want adjacent to your yard, I think everybody would say no. In spite of the pretty picture that we've been given here, you know, I don't believe that this will be the facts of what's going to happen in this house and in this neighborhood if we allow this. I don't think it's going to be the roses that's been presented to us, of saving some kids and, you know, into a new life. I wish it could be, but I don't believe that is what this will be. But again, my main concern is not with the home or what's wrong with the home. I have no doubt that they can fix anything that's wrong with the house. I mean, they can, once they own this and this commercial, they can bulldoze it down and make a brand new home. That we don't have to worry about the water or the flooding or anything else. But with 5 acres, we could make more homes and we could put more kids, and this could become a huge property and become a large business and create even more problems. The issue itself for me is changing this from a residential property to a commercial property. That's the biggest issue I see with it. And I just hope that you don't allow that.
Thank you.
My name is J.R. Boria. There's going to be a negative impact in this neighborhood. My concern is, and I oppose to this house being put into my backyard. These houses, it's like a halfway house, and I'm going to start reading. This is a survey and a study that we did from NCORE, if you want to find it. In consideration, conditions across the country believe that the number entering foster care will rise. You know, it's going to be much more. So we know that it's only 6 in this house now. There's 5 acres in there. What is in the future building another one in the other acreage and another one in the acreage, and then we'll have 7, 14, 21 of these kids in there. Okay? Government is spending more money into this program that DCF, Department of Children and Family, have written articles about broken system, and now the state is putting much more money into this system, making it a very lucrative business. Good for you that you have a business going on. We have contacted some foster care parents and group residents home. What they have to say is, this consists of mostly at-risk teenagers that have hard places for them to live. So we are told that these are worst behaved kids. This will include substance abuse, minor parents, mental health problem, sex offenders, or sex offended. It is difficult to recruit and hire and train social workers for these foster homes, which make it very unsafe. The study shows that there is around 20% rise in crime in some areas that have foster homes. Property, time for sale, and value of the property. It is less of an impact on mid to low value homes. Time for sale on the market increased an average of 15 to 25 days for these lower properties. Property of higher value, 150 and above, value suffered. It's a decrease of around 12 to 22%, and from 25 to 40 days, more longer, to be able to sell this property. The study shows that the properties of higher price takes longer, lower value because of these situations. It also showed that group home in less expensive, by the way, this is a good thing. And it also showed that group home in less expensive neighborhoods did not generate a higher degree of neighborhood turnover. The study also shows that group homes do not do much better in urban neighborhoods close to school, shopping, and park. It will be a better for the group home to be placed in the city. By the way, these houses is just like an halfway house. They're incarcerated. As she said, they can only go out while they're supervised for everything. So this is not a good atmosphere for these kids. And with that, I pray that you please take us into consideration and making your decision. Thank you so much. Next.
Commissioners, My name is Linda Wiley. I'm the treasurer for Salem Township, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the township tonight. We have two major concerns about this project. The first one is that we already are seeing an increase in crime in the rural areas. We've had a lot more thefts in the last year. While I understand that in a perfect world, these youths will be supervised, people fall through the cracks. We only have one community policing officer for 36 square miles. Services are going to suffer in other areas of the township if in fact they spend more time at this residence. Our second concern, of course, is drainage, because that's what we worry about. I'm afraid you've been misinformed. That property has flooded many more times than 3 in the last 37 years. It's actually, water levels of 5 feet in the basement were not uncommon during flooding instances. You've been fortunate. We have not
Linda,
had.
if you would for a minute.
I'm sorry.
Just so we're all aware, you all live there, so you know about the drainage problems. There are people up here that aren't aware of how bad and unique that drainage area is. Could you cover that a little bit for us?
I'd be happy to. My house, which is on 95th Street, my husband, when we built there, built the house up above the 100-year floodplain. Since that time, we have had so many problems with groundwater throughout the whole township, but particularly on the east part of the township, which would be anywhere from 71st Street south to Mulvane, and probably Broadway on east to the river is the section in particular that I'm discussing right now. I've flooded 3 times in 20 years, sitting in above the 100-year floodplain. When USGS redrew the flood maps for the township, the little section where my house sits and the little section where my barn sits are still above the 500-year floodplain, but the whole rest of my 12.5 acres is below, and I'm on high ground. The area that we're discussing, which is Haysville, hydraulic adjacent, and then on towards the river, those poor people, the last time we had flood conditions, literally pumped for 6 months or more. It doesn't matter how good a pump you have to pump out your basement. The water is not coming in from someplace, it's coming up from the ground. We're that close to the Arkansas. The aquifer is obviously way wider than the river that runs through it. And there's nothing you can do to stop the water coming up. We have looked at wells. One of the things that helped bring the water table down was we got the county to agree to fund the old Derby pumping stations, and they pumped, I can't remember off the top of my head how many gallons, but
3 months.
for 3 months, but I'm trying to think how many gallons an hour they pumped.
It was a lot.
Yeah. And, but once we turned them off, the water comes back up again. So I'll be happy to answer any questions about flooding.
No, I
It's
just wanted to
kind
make
of
it
a
clear
bugaboo
that
for us.
it wasn't that the basement was flooding because it's coming on the surface. It's
No,
coming
no.
up from beneath.
It's
And
coming up from
I'm probably
beneath.
describing everybody in this room, but I've heard stories of up to 12 sump pumps in a basement. I've heard stories about the water literally heaving the concrete in the basement.
That's correct.
I'm probably describing all of your stories. I just wanted to make sure that that was understood here, that it wasn't that the basement flooded during one rain event. It's a constant problem for the entire area.
How many years have we known that there was a flooding problem in this area?
Well, actually, we've always known.
For decades?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have worked with the county, as I say, I've lived at that on 95th Street for 20 years now. My late husband worked for PEC, so he knew what he was doing when we put the house in. But there are people, before the floodplain maps were redrawn, there are a lot of people that bought property and were unaware and then found themselves in a position where they can't sell them now, or not sell them and recoup the money they've put in. There is a section of our township over by the river that FEMA bought out. Some people chose to stay, but we have that were bought out and are just sitting abandoned and derelict because they have there's nothing you can do with them because of the flooding issues. And again, it's not the river that comes over. Well, the river comes over the bank, but the problem is long after the waters recede, the groundwater still is coming up in the basement. There is a dedicated drainage easement that runs behind this property. We also put in a second culvert to give us access to the property, to the drainage easement, so that we can trim the trees and keep it cleared out. Technically speaking, I think that's more of a county issue than it is a township issue, but they can only be so many places at once, so we take care of that too. So anyway, those are our two concerns, the policing, the drainage, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about those if you like.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
My name is Nick Warren. I live directly behind the property. My yard is connected with this property. And I would like to talk for just a minute about the conditions of the property. I know a lot about this home. I've remodeled it twice. I've helped the previous owner with pumps, pipes, all kinds of things. I have 4 issues here I'd like to run by you real quick. And some of these we've already covered, so I'll try to be quick. The condition of the house, it's 38 years old. The rooms are small. It has a history of mold, termites, and spiders since I've been at this location 32 years. Number 2, the basement floods. We've talked about that already. It floods on an average of every 4 years. We have documentation of that from the county. It has 3 sump pumps in the basement at this time. 1 window well. The drainage pipes from this basement to the ditch are not connected. They're not installed at this time. Number 3, this is important. The wastewater septic system is old and designed for single-family use. It will not handle more than 1 family. I have talked to Tim Wagner at Sedgwick County. He informed me yesterday it's not been inspected. It will not pass for a group home. It will have to be reinstalled. And I was informed the cost of that is very expensive. And then number 4, the water well is very old. It's not been tested by the county. We have documentation on that also from Tim Wagner. I got it yesterday. Rose has a copy. The well, like I say, has not been tested and has not been inspected by Sedgwick County. So we know these 4 issues will have to be addressed. We know they can be repaired, but I have, and Rose has some of them too, we have bids from contractors that these 4 issues will run over $100,000. Questions?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Warren. I'm married to Nick, and I do oppose this. I oppose this group home. A couple things, I have several things I probably want to talk about, but one of the things is, you know, you got 13 to 18-year-old kids, they're not going to want to sit inside all the time. They're going to want to walk around. Well, let me tell you what, there's no lights on that street. There's no sidewalks on this street. The only way that these kids are going to go from hydraulic is back to our neighborhood. That's what they're going to do. So they're going to walk through the property. Kids aren't going to go down the little bit of easement that's on hydraulic and walk around. Last year, there was a guy that got killed on that street on hydraulic. And he was in a car and he got killed and he was in the ditch. They found him in the ditch. So, I know that she has a good idea of trying to raise these kids. I get it. I myself am adopted myself from some really good family. But they couldn't take two of my siblings in because they weren't right. And to say, pick and choose or whatever, to say, hey, yeah, this or not, that's pretty hard to do. And I get it. But let me tell you what, I commend her for wanting to try to do something with kids, but not here. There's other places to take these kids, but not here. The other thing I want to talk about is we got a son together. He's my stepson, it's his. His name is Nico. He's a special needs boy. He got in an accident when he was 18. He's 35. He walks the neighborhood. He goes sees all these people. He walks around that neighborhood. And let me tell you what, I couldn't even imagine if something would happen to him, because he could be easily bullied. He could easily be influenced. He's just one of them kind of kids. He really is. I know she's worried about her kid, but I'm worried about my own kid. I'm worried about what could happen to Nico, and that bothers me. You can't do anything to try to, if you do too much to Nico, he can have a seizure. And I'm going to tell you what, it would very much upset me if something like that would happen. His needs are just as important as those kids' needs are. And every one of these kids here in the neighborhood, their needs are just as important as these 6 or 7 kids. And they're going to be rotating them throughout, however long this house might be there, a lifetime for us. We've already gone through it enough. When you talk about the floods, I'm going to tell you something, it still haunts me. It still haunts me. I don't even put some of my really good, memorable stuff down in the basement. It's still up. You walk through the entranceway, and I got this little deal with all my memorabilia because I'm afraid to lose what little bit I did get, little bit of pictures I have of my family, and that, that wasn't already lost. I still have my clothes upstairs. I have some clothes downstairs, but you got to see this one room. I don't even want to take my clothes downstairs. So I know she might not think about this, but let me tell you what, it still haunts me, this flood. And I'm scared that we're going to get next year, the year after, the year after. It does. People don't understand the drama, the traumatized that it has on you. I couldn't imagine having kids have to go through that. It haunts me. Also, what I want to talk about is when she talked about the mold. My brother does inspections. So when she says you do an inspection, did they do a true test? Did they bring the machine out? Did they bring the machine out to test the inside molding? Did they really go do that? Because Suzanne Summers had a deal talking about mold and how it affected her. And 4 years, she thought she had cancer. It's pretty serious. Not to take it so lightly. It bothered me that she took it so lightly. But it's more serious than what people think, and of those kind of things. I think people should need to understand, just to say, well, a guy walked in and did an inspection. Well, exactly what inspection was that? I'll make sure I cover everything before I step down off this little pedestal of mine. I don't get this every day. And then the other thing is, when you talk about driving them around, who's going to drive these kids around? Who's going to take them? That takes a lot of people. And it says it doesn't affect anybody. You doggone it affects somebody. I know that when you start to drive, you can't wait till your kids drive because you don't have to drive them everywhere. Well, you got 7 kids and they're 13 to 18, there's a lot of places those kids want to go. So it does impact driving in and out of that driveway. And who's going to take these kids? You know, that's a lot. You know, I can only say this, I think there's other places that's more inside the city limits that could handle something like this, but not us, not on that street. That's all I got to say.
My name's Gary Chapman. I live directly behind the property as well. I have to say that when we got the letter, that I was shocked that that would even be a proposal. I believe that when the occupant bought that place, they thought that it would be okay to put a group home in. My feeling is that they didn't do their homework before they bought it. So now they're wanting to change our lives to make it a business, and that's exactly what it is. There may be some kids that her experience has been with that have not caused problems, but I think if you've seen the paper for the last 3 or 4 years, you know that DCF has hundreds and hundreds of issues. They're throwing money at it. On 11/16/18, they have filed a class lawsuit that's 68 pages long against this system and all the problems they have with it. If you would like to look at that case number, it's case number 18 CV2617. This will knock your socks off. I cannot believe the things that are going on. Anywhere from, well, I won't even go into it. I'll just let you read it for yourself. The fact is that the statistics say different, that these kids are not troubled kids. I mean, it's a shame for the kids. They're a product of their environment. But those that age out of the foster care system, 1/4 of them are incarcerated within 2 years. So there is a lot of issues along with foster children, and it's a shame. We are sorry for the children. But the fact is, this is a business. And it's right behind our residential area, which is what it was zoned before, and we don't want to see it changed any other way. There's one other thing I'm going to share. There's an article, and it's called Profiting from Foster Care, and it says, should we profit from foster children? To say the foster care system is broken is an understatement. Without understanding the root causes, our leaders are pushing for solutions to either spend more money on recruiting foster parents or lowering the requirements to be a social worker. The foster care contract, the Department for Children and Families has legal custody of the children, yet they are contracting to private organizations, mainly the St. Francis Center and the Kansas Behavioral Health Care. These two organizations have increased the number of the number of foster children can be traced directly to the verbiage in the contract. The way the contract reads is that if a child is aged out or if the child has found a home, they are no longer able to collect that money. There is no real reason to have these children go out of the system because they make their money from continuing the system. And I hate to think that there is money at the expense of those children, but there really is money out there to be made off of this system. And I believe they just threw $500,000 at it from our state. I think if you'll look, you'll find that. Yesterday in the paper, they said there was 80 kids that they don't know where they're at. They ran away. So there is a problem with the system. And I'm thankful that there are people that are trying to help these kids, but just throwing money at it and putting group homes in neighborhood, I don't believe that's the right solution to it. We have here 117 signatures from our neighborhood that say that they do not want this to go into our neighborhood, that they want to keep it as a residential area. So we strongly object to this change, and we would appreciate that you would stand up for us as our community leaders and help us to keep this the way that we've always had it. And I can tell you that as far as water, that basically you cannot pump it out quick enough as it comes in. It's just over the top. And I'm sorry that she didn't know that when she bought it, but all I can tell you is that a person that's going to run a business, they have to check into what they're going to buy before they buy it. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kelly Chapman, and I live in the property exactly back behind this property. Not to the side, just we're smack behind this property. I want you to know that there are some of us here who can personally relate to these kids. We ourselves grew up as troubled teens in broken homes, homes with drug addiction, alcoholism, abuse, violence, broken families, and serious dysfunction. We desperately needed parental attention, love, guidance, and that we didn't get. Luckily, some of us had family members or family friends who saw the situations we were in, and they stepped up and took us in. And I'm one of those people. The personal experiences and struggles in my life as a kid helped me to easily recognize the signs and pains of troubled kids. As a young adult, I started helping young kids and investing in their lives. I volunteered and drove an old standard transmission school bus, non-air conditioned. I drove it twice a week into the worst neighborhoods in Wichita. I picked up kids of all kinds, from all kinds of backgrounds. I picked up those kids and I took them to church. Took them to church to make a difference in their lives. I quickly recognized that some of them were in desperate need of attention, love, guidance, and direction, just like I had been. I had an opportunity to help many of those kids and their families, and I did. Some of them still reach out to me for help today. And we help. My husband and I help them. Unfortunately, several of those kids ended up in the foster care system, and even in multiple foster care group homes, like what's being suggested here. I contacted one of them. I asked her to tell me what these group homes are like, because quite frankly, we didn't get a lot of information to make a decision, and we weren't educated in this, but it's in our backyard. This little girl, or she's a woman now, she has grandkids. She has incredible insight, as she was not only a foster kid in Sedgwick County, she's also given back and been a foster parent to teens, or to kids in need. She shared with me some of her experiences, and some of them aren't very nice. She said, as her experience in group homes, that they would run away regularly. She said that her and her friends would steal from the neighbors to buy cigarettes. She said that she once was woken up in the middle of the night because her group home was on fire. I can't imagine out there. One of the kids decided to rebel against the staff, and they set the house on fire. She said, we all come from different homes of addiction, crime, and deception. She said, we were never taught any better, so we lived out what we were modeled. She said one of her roommates would have sex with an old man in the neighborhood to get money, and it was ultimately to help them run away. She said when you get multiple kids from broken homes under the same roof, they rally together, they share bad ideas, and they act on them, usually trying to run away from the group home, always trying to survive. Not my experience, but hers. As I mentioned earlier, as an adult, she became a foster parent. She said she wanted to help kids like her siblings. She wanted to save kids from her pain, the pain she experienced, and make a real difference in their lives. She explained to me that on February 4th, 2019, not very long ago, that she has housed her last teenage boy. She said that she has been physically assaulted many times by them. She's been woke up in the middle of the night to a teenage boy with a knife in fear for her life. Personal experiences. She said they have stolen from her many times, they've run away, and she had one who was suicidal. And one teenage boy that had sex with her dog. I can't imagine. She said, you name it, unfortunately, she's probably experienced it. She said it is hard for caseworkers to place a lot of these troubled teenage boys because no one willingly will take a kid with a history of violence, drug addiction, running away, sexual offenses, and so on. A group home, as she says, is the last resort for a lot of these kids, and that is sad. That is sad. She explained that her own nephew, a nephew that I've helped personally, my husband's helped, he's from Wichita. He aged out of foster care from a group home. that he would steal cars, he would run away every time he got a chance. He would steal cars, motorcycles, bikes, any kind of transportation that he could find so he could get away from the group home. Unfortunately, as an adult, he has continued the deviant behavior, stealing things, doing drugs, violence that has landed him in and out of jail for the last 7 years. We've helped him twice when he's gotten out of jail, try to help him get on his feet. We care. We're not, we have empathy. We're not cold and callous. She says with a group home for boys in our neighborhood that we can expect a revolving door of teenage boys who have unfortunately grown up around drugs, addiction, crime, and deception, and that's all they know. It doesn't sound at all like those group homes are a good, positive, or a safe environment for these at-risk kids. Not a group home, maybe a foster home where they're with a family. I guess the owner of this property doesn't think it's a safe place for her and her kids either, because we've been informed by Rose that she's planning to move herself and take her 2 kids and move into live in another home in Haysville, while she hires somebody else to staff her new group home for teenage boys. But not me and not my kids. If this goes through, we don't have a choice. We will be living right smack behind this group home. My daughters. Please put it on the record that I strongly object to this rezoning to put a group home in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Trudy Rupert. Please record that I object to the zoning changes. I'm not sure if any of you are aware that we have a state licensed daycare center within 2 blocks of this residence where they're going to put a group home. The daycare provider has never, ever had any problems in her home with anything. But that is going to change if you grant this zone. That is a monster of fear for the parents. Can you imagine your children at a daycare with a group home less than 2.5 blocks from it? I'm very concerned because my grandchildren go to that daycare. Please remember, the applicant is not even going to live there. So how is she going to create a loving family environment? Also, I talked to a sheriff's officer, and this was his constructive feedback. I asked him what the homeowners could or would do about a problem if it occurred. He said, "Ma'am, you call 911. He said, "Unfortunately, where you're located, it will take 20 to 25 minutes for an officer to get on site." And he said, a lot of problems can occur in 20 to 25 minutes. We don't live in the city of Haysville, so we don't have any support from the Haysville Police Department. He said, a lifetime of emergencies will take place at that location. The kids will terrorize the neighborhood and create problems because they have no consequences. He said some of the problems that we've seen in group homes, and this is not a foster home, this is a group home. They're 2 different environments. He said you have theft, trespassing, inappropriate sex behavior, assault, and vandalism. They walk from house to house until they get what they want. In closing, the group home should not be allowed in a neighborhood like ours. This is a single-family dwelling home. This is not a group environment, not zoned correctly. Please take this into consideration and do not approve the zoning. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Charles Rupert. I've been living in Haysville for 30 years. I've built houses in Haysville. My son is a general contractor around Haysville. I'm asking you please to listen. We object. I object. The 112 people we have, we didn't get everybody, objects. And the reason why is nobody wants it because of what can happen. It's not that we don't care for kids. We love kids too. But when you go from 13 to 18 and then you change that code where we can add one out there, you got 5 acres, come on. What do you think's gonna happen? Even if you give her the ultimatum of you've got to knock the basement out, fill it with sand, you still got acreage on each side. They can go back and build more. You told her you gotta take that house out. Should do her homework. So I'm asking you, I'm pleading with you, as being a person from Haysville, that's lived here all these years, and I know Bruce Armstrong, I know everybody in Haysville. I don't know some of you in here because you're new, but I did a lot of things in this town, and I've helped a lot of people. I've seen the people, the older people here, you know, John Trout, not around no more. I know all those people that was here, did a lot of business with a lot of banks. What I'm saying is, really consider this, think about it. Think about what you want in your backyard. If it's little kids, handicapped, that need help, I can understand that. But when you say the age that she's going for as a group home, let's don't do that. I don't think Haysville wants it. And I'm just being honest. There's things I know that's been said and done. I'm not gonna put it up here. You folks know about it. So, that's all I got to say. Thank you. You got any questions you want to ask me? I'll be glad to answer them.
No, but I'll clarify, we're not new. Most of
Okay,
us have
well,
lived here long.
so-
Bob's been on the planning commission for 40 years.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, there is some people who are new, that's what I'm saying.
I'm not new. I'm third
not
generation
new.
married into.
Okay.
I went
Well,
to
then you know about
Nelson,
Haysville.
Rex, middle school, graduated from campus, and then moved back here after college.
And I went to Nelson, Haysville Middle School, and campus. We're not new.
Well, then, I'm pleading with you to do the right thing for us.
One more comment.
Sure. Yes,
I
sir.
lived here for 49 years.
Okay. I just never met you then, huh? I've been here 30 years, you know, and all my kids went to school here and everything. And I love
will
Haysville.
clarify,
I love
This is not
Haysville.
Haysville School District that you're talking about. This
Well-
address is in Derby.
We know, and that brings up another thing. Those kids will be going on the buses to those schools, won't they?
Yes, they will, to
Okay.
Derby.
Well, will Haysville, in the near future,
No,
be getting that area?
no.
You're sure?
That's up to the state of Kansas, the State
Okay.
Department. They
Well, I'm
set
just
the
saying,
boundaries.
it could change, no?
Probably not.
Okay, well, I hope so. Thank you.
Anybody from the right side of the room want to talk? Anybody outside?
Yeah, I want to talk. I live at 8210 South Hydraulic. My name's Edward Strucka. And I had a planning commission with me when I bought my house that there was no businesses around, no enterprising business to make money, because I didn't want a house in that environment. And this is going against what I bought for 27 years ago, 22 years ago. And I think it would be, you talk about not having police support. Well, if it's in the city here, you got police driving around all the time. Out there, we got sheriffs come by every couple of days. And you don't have sidewalks for the kids to get out of the home. So where are they gonna go? They're gonna go through the yards, out on hydraulic. They don't have a good environment to grow up. It's gonna be, they're gonna be coming around our area, and I don't think that'll be good for them or us. I'm not saying I'm not saying put sidewalks, club hydraulic to make this work. But if it's out in the country like that, the kids they're homebound. They're in the house, and they won't stay there. And I'm just fearful that the bad element will get out. I'm not saying all these kids are bad, but this is a business and it's an enterprise, and the area wasn't zoned for that when I moved in. And I don't want it to change. That's all I got to say. Yes.
Did you fill out one of these?
No.
Would you, since you
Yes.
spoke, and give it to Rose for me?
Okay, thank you very much for your
Yep.
time.
Anybody else?
My name's Jeffrey Kissick. I'm a new resident to this neighborhood. Me and my wife bought the house 7 years ago. Didn't evidently do our research. Yeah, we got flooding, gotcha. Asked people for help, never got it. Got told the last time we had a situation not to come to one of these meetings because certain individual that I know and everyone else knows, we know what he did. Besides the point, I have 2 children, 7, little boy, and 10, the little girl. And they are my world, my world. They are my heart, my everything. I lost my father dearly just in the end of July due to pancreatic cancer. And I always thought, man, I wish I could be remembered like that man is. But his image and his way that he's taught me, you always knew what side of the right and wrong he was on. I always asked, how can I be this man? like my father, and what impression he would leave on people. And I got told that the impression that he left is me. I'm the next man in the family. I have a son and stuff. I've heard from multiple neighbors, oh, he's that kid on the green bike. He's such an angel. And I had to make sure, my son, because he's an angel, but he's rotten to the core and stuff. And my daughter, if she wasn't around, I'd probably be in jail. She tells Daddy all the time, Daddy, don't. Well, it's good advice. But they're 7 and 10. I bought my house and that property because it's a safe, quiet, large neighborhood where I feel safe. My neighbors to the right, my neighbors to the left, my neighbors across the street, we're all on the same cul-de-sac. My children are the only children in that area. They ride up and down that street on their bikes. They play out front like they should as children are. I watch them as much as I can, but there's always that one chance that I cannot be there. And anyone that has grandchildren, anyone that has children, you always have to ask yourself, sweetheart, I know what you're doing. I honor it. I do. I have friends of mine that do the exact same thing, but they have experienced problems. I've seen the problems firsthand, and I'm not saying it could happen, but put anyone in this room, you put your children and your grandchildren in a situation, 25 minutes for a cop to show up, that's crazy. 25 minutes, a life can be taken, someone can be hurt, someone can be raped, someone can be burglarized. And so for one, I carry a handgun all the time with me. I have my license for it. I don't go out shooting up the town like the Old West. By God, there would probably be no more people bad. I'd probably be dead myself. But put yourself in my shoes. That 1 minute that Daddy says, kids, I gotta go to the bathroom. 1% of those people, just say one kid gets out that's not in the right, hurt my children, hell will come with me. Because I'll tell you one thing, I don't know any parent that wouldn't take care or try to do what's right. 25 minutes for a cop to show up, I guess I can unload my weapon. And so 25 minutes for a cop to show up, shots are already fired. And so I trust my neighborhood, and I darn well don't want to move, because not only my neighborhood is safe, I've gotten great friends that have become my neighbors. So I strongly object to this. I understand the situations, but not in this neighborhood. There's no businesses there. I've known that area since I was a child. The Batson family had an orchard there. My mom is 72 years old, worked at that orchard. My father worked at that orchard. And so I knew there was water problems. Any orchard wouldn't. Everyone knows this is Haysville. You put Haysville on a map, there's either a tornado or a flood. That's what we're going to get. I know this neighborhood. I know plenty of people in this neighborhood. And believe me, I try to be a big brother to a lot of my friends' kids. And to see a child being helped by somebody, I honor you. I do. Because there's a lot of people that don't. I have plenty of my friends, but I'll tell you right now, my friends wouldn't come 10 foot from this building, because, well, we all know Haysville, So, but like I said, I strongly object to this situation in my neighborhood due to the safety of my children. And the only question I want to leave with everybody is, what if a situation happened? What's going to happen? It's going to bring hell and chaos to our whole entire community. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Mike Watson. I own a HVAC company here in Wichita. I've been called that home several times in the past during the flood season. The furnace is in the basement. The furnace has been completely underwater before. Now, hopefully they've changed it out, I'm sure. But if the furnace is still down in that basement, that's definitely a hazard if we get these high waters. I live at 8400 South Spruce, so I'm on the other side of hydraulic, but my house is probably right in line with that house, right down the tree line. My fear is these kids get out, they're gonna walk down that tree line and go to Derby, and they're gonna walk right through my backyard to walk down what would be 84th Street, going towards Haysville. I just think that's a problem, and that's my issue. Thanks.
Would you fill out a card, please,
Yes, I will.
and give it to Rose? Thank you.
Well, my name's Joe Whaley. I do live right behind them. And the subjects I got, most of them, it's been covered, and I don't want to repeat and have to be repetitive. But I just want to say that I oppose it. One issue I had that I've thought about, and I don't know the answers, is there's no public waste disposal, it's septics, and we've talked about the septics, but on a 5-acre area, I don't know what the county would let how much sewage that come out of homes they would let in an area, because everybody's talking about our water table coming up. Well, we use that water to cook and drink with. And the more the merrier down there in that 5 acres. It's just, and I living next to it, I just have these bad thoughts about contaminated water, so, and health issues. So that's my 2 cents, so thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Tanya Ridka, and I live at 1500 East 86th Street South. I did a lot of research because I know you guys want facts. And there's been studies about these places, and I am all for helping children. But I've also learned from being a mother of 2 children that it's important that other kids learn from other children that are in good homes, and that they talk mostly to children of age about issues, and that's what helps them grow. They need to go to sporting events. They need to play in sporting events. This helps with structure, and these are facts. They need to be able to walk to the park and play with people. They're gonna be old enough to do that. We don't have that in this area. I used to have to take my children in town all the time because I wanted to make sure that as a mom, they didn't miss out on any of that stuff. And it takes a lot of work with 2 boys, especially when they're in multiple different sports. And I think it's important when they grow up that they can do these things. And it takes a lot of work, and I think we need to take that into consideration. We don't have that in this area. As well, that she's not gonna live on the property. If this is something she wanted to do, me as a mother, I'd wanna be part of that all the time. If I was helping other kids, I'd want to be there. I want to make sure that things are being handled right. That's important. And I think we need to look at that for the children. And I've heard people address concerns over the fact that the cops could take a while to get there. That's not mine. How many of these kids might have diabetes? How many of these kids might have a medical issue? I understand there's going to be nurses on site, but nurses can't always do everything. It's still going to take 25 to 30 minutes for an ambulance to get to our community, even if there's a fire. And every minute counts when a life is concerned. And I think that you need to take those into consideration as well. And I do oppose to the zoning change because I did live their rule. But I do want you to understand that I've thought about this hard. And I said to myself, what was I more important about? And to me, it's more important as a mother that these kids get the proper care and that they can enjoy themselves with other kids. And I think that our area is just not right for that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Anybody else?
I'm not a speaker or anything, but this man here, he sat here and said our voices don't count. Well, there's a lot of people here that have decided that our voices should count. And you guys should listen to all of us. That's all.
I have a question.
You state your name.
Wendy Cool.
Did you fill out the card?
Yes. We talk about what it costs to renovate the house and bring it up to standard, if that's even possible. Who pays for that?
The landowner would.
Hmm?
Grant?
Right, right. So you bought that house and you knew that the city would end up paying for all the renovations because it was unlivable when she bought it. She knew that. She knew that ahead of time. And it was already zoned when you bought it
No, if there is.
for a single-family home.
Ma'am, if there's modifications, it's gonna be up to the applicant to do that, nobody else.
So $100,000 just for like the septic and what that one man was
We had no
talking
clue.
about.
We had no clue, that's not been determined at all.
That's on the home.
That was somebody's opinion.
She will pay for all of that,
Yes.
which she's going to pay more in renovation than you paid for the house. How much, if you only had 4 children in foster care instead of 6, you wouldn't have to rezone, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what's the difference in the amount of money you gave? There's a line somewhere. I mean, why do you have to have 6? Why not just have 4?
Ma'am, if you would address us
I'm
and
sorry.
not her, if.
So that's
we
my
don't want this
question
to be
too. Why do
confrontational.
we have to have 6? Why not just have 4 in the home?
Well, right,
I mean, we're gonna
respectfully-
rezone.
Respectfully, whatever her financial status might be, or whether or not she has means to address the issues at
Well-
hand, are not really the issue here.
Well, my issue is, it's if the taxpayers are paying for it, or is she paying for it? And that is an issue.
Mr. You're out. Can you cover that?
Well, the only thing I can say is that the business decision was made by the owner. And it's my understanding that the request is to classify the operation differently under DCF rules for it to be qualified as a group home, or group boarding home, as opposed to just someone, anybody. If you qualify, you could be a foster parent if you want. And so that's the classification change within the state, and I'm sure there's financial arrangements associated with that. But as far as the facility goes, to bring it up to code compliant will be required of the owner. And I'm not aware of any other financial assistance that's available anywhere, including by DCF, to do that. That's a choice that's being made by the owner. So if there are changes or modifications that are required, that'll be required and to be paid by the owner. As far as the number that was floated around, that was an earlier opinion. Yes, we've seen earlier estimates that were done back when the county was talking about paying for stuff. That's off the table and it's not an issue. So I have no idea what the costs will be to modify the home, to bring up the water and or wastewater system to be code compliant. Those are all issues that will be determined if this goes forward.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak against?
I'd like to, but Louisa,
You gotta come up to the microphone.
And again, where I address is the mold issues, because she said that she had somebody come out. I do have an issue on what kind of test that they did do for the mold, because like I said, they have a machine out there that you have to do on the inside and the outside. And so I would like to make sure when she did do that, what type of testing that they did do. What I do know is that when Kay lived there, we had I bought like extra dehumidifiers. Kay did borrow my dehumidifier. For 6 months, this dehumidifier was upstairs. And she emptied it, and she would send me messages, oh my God, I've emptied it 3 or 4 times a day, upstairs. It wasn't even downstairs, it was upstairs. So I can only imagine what's happening there. He brought up the air conditioner thing. My brother said, and even in this thing about Suzanne Summers, they're saying about mold in the air conditioning and stuff like that. Moisture was what my brother said too. We live in a society of humidity, and humidity can set that mold off. It's behind the walls, it's underneath the layment. And so it can grow. So just to live there for 6 months and act like, oh, it won't ever happen, the moisture can set that off, it can go on. And they say you should do tests all the time on mold. You should be testing it all the time. So are those the kind of things that, you know, if you, God forbid, you would pass something like this, but these are the issues that if, you know, God forbid, but it's like you almost have to either tear it down or something like that, because this house, you really don't know everything that's within that. That house has, and I feel sorry for Kay because, you know, and them guys, that what they had to go through living in there, and they were they were in a really bad area. We didn't get 4 or 5 feet in our basement. We got 3 feet, and that was enough for me. And that traumatized me. Talking about living here in Haysville, I've lived here in Haysville 50 years. I'm 60 years old, been here 50 years. My parents, my aunt and uncle John and Dee Trout raised me. They took me in. And let me tell you what, they loved children. They loved them. But there's some children they couldn't take in, and I'm just saying I'm worried about that. I'm worried about not all kids can just adapt to like love and caring, because they do have problems. They're bipolar and stuff like that. And I'm scared for that because I've been around it. My own sisters taking a knife and sticking it to my throat. My own sisters. My aunt and uncle didn't take these in because they were kind of troubled. And I would hate to have somebody, you know, we're right behind, where I wake up to a knife to my throat. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to feel good about that. So again, I oppose this.
I just want to say one more thing. In my conversations with Rose, we discussed the incredible expense to fill in that basement. And she informed me that there was grant money that the current homeowner knows she can get to help cover the expenses of the filling in the basement. So it may fall on us taxpayers. And if those kids get sick, you know, all of their health care is paid for. Those kids get sick because of black mold. I wrote everything you told me down. If they get sick because of black mold, that's coming back on us taxpayers too, because they're going to be going to the doctor or the emergency room, whatever. That falls on us as taxpayers. And the place is covered in poison ivy. She knows it. She's been covered in it. My husband's been over there working. He's been covered in it. It's covered in poison ivy. You can't get rid of it. But we'll pay for those health care bills. And we very well may pay with our tax dollars if she applies for grant money to fill in that basement.
Okay, Mr. Kuykendall, would you want to address any of the issues that the neighbors brought up?
No, Your Honor, or...
It's very generous, thank you.
I don't think there's anything more to say. I think you've heard concerns by the neighbors, and those concerns are real concerns, but I think they're unreasonable fears instead. We think that the concerns that you should have are those concerns that you are required by your own zoning code to consider in the nature of whether this conditional use should be permitted. And simply fears of residents are not enough to justify rejection of a conditional use.
Business enterprise.
One of you can speak if you want to address something that he said. We're not going to go back through everybody.
Okay. I just want to ask a question. If this applicant lives in Haysville, can she not have that home in Haysville instead of bringing it out to our area, to our homes that's single-family dwelling? Will Haysville grant her a group home in Haysville?
That's not what we're discussing here tonight.
Well, I realize that, but I mean, I'm just saying, we don't really want that in our addition out there. We have homes from areas from 100,000 to 400,000 out there. And her home is not a $400,000 house. But I'm just saying, she has a home here. She lives here in the city of Haysville. So maybe she should reconsider that.
Was
Thank
it
you.
ever a $400,000 home?
What?
Was it ever a $400,000?
No, I said there are homes in that addition that are
That are.
$400,000.
Right.
No, this
Yeah.
house that she purchased was never a $400,000 home.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make a clarification statement about the issue before you is the opportunity for the city of Haysville to review and comment the application. They have a right to apply. That's all this is. It's a land use decision. The decision will be made by the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. As I said in the beginning, at the applicant's request, that will be deferred and not even be heard by public hearing until April 18th. The issue of whether or not application can be made at another location, this lady, Mrs. Henschel, or anybody else can apply at any time at any location for a similar type operation. So it's not a question of can they, the issue is only regarding this property. And I think the only issue really is a land use question about whether or not this is appropriate use and activity to occur at this property under the circumstances that we know. Nothing else is really relevant to the matter going forward, and that will be discussed at detail by the Planning Commission of Wichita, Sedgwick County when it gets to that stage. So
But MAPD staff recommends that this request be denied.
the recommendation based on, at the time the staff report was written, is that our recommendation is for denial of the request, and we outline conditions that we thought would be appropriate if the decision was made subsequently by the Planning Commission and/or the county commissioners to approve.
Thank you. Discussion from the Planning Commission?
I'd like to say something. I grew up in a home not just south of here. I'm from the area. I had 8 foster kids in the home. I had 2 biological sisters. I have 1 adopted brother. I also was a foster parent who adopted recently. This is an emotional issue that you guys all take heart with. Every one of us loves our kids. That's not a question here. What we have to do is take the emotion out of it and address this logically. And I think what we're looking at, is there a reason that you couldn't have the 6 kids in the home without being rezoned?
I'm not licensed. I can't get licensed for that in that home.
They won't license you for that many in that location?
Right.
Okay. And you do have a home here in Haysville in addition to that one? Okay. That was all I wanted to state out there, is that I have been on both sides of this. So before we vote, you know, this is personal as well as logical.
Any more discussion?
I have something to say. As we sit on a board like this, or commission as this is, it is very helpful to get opinions from the public. In this case, I believe, I will vote accordingly, that it remain rural residential. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that a motion.
I'll
that it
second.
remain.
I have a motion and second to deny this zone change request. Recommend zone change request. That we recommend the denial of this zone change request to MAPC. All in favor of denial, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. If you are all going to stay, you're more than welcome to. But if you're going to leave, please do so quietly so we can conduct the rest of our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
No old business. No correspondence and information reading. Are there any committee updates?
Pedestrian and bicycle met. Okay.
Okay. Would you go close that door, please? Thank you, Rose. All right, Bob, go ahead.
Pedestrian and Bicycle Committee met for the first time since July, and I don't think I've got anything that affects the Planning Commission to report.
Debbie, any historic committee?
No.
No other committee updates?
I have nothing from HFI,
That's the
the
one
meeting
I was
coming
thinking
up, yeah.
Okay.
Should I go over BZA things? You would need to have your maps and stuff ready to show what we just talked about this evening. And you don't, I know, because it was what, a month ago when we did that. It wasn't anything that y'all would even care about.
Well, that's not true.
Well, it was an adjustment of a yard setback from 6 feet to 3 feet at 419 North Mimosa Drive. But instead of doing it the whole width of the property, we just did it, the person wanted to add a garage on and
At 977 Alexander or Mimosa?
do I have it wrong? See, that's why I knew I needed
Okay,
help.
you want me to finish it for you?
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
so at Mimosa, there was a variance request to add or change the direction of the garage and change the existing garage into a shop. But it was denied by the BZA, because it was discovered that an urban easement agreement was created back in 1966.
That's it.
And it was nowhere to be found, and I was lucky enough to get it from Westar Energy. Yay.
Good job, thank you.
And the recent one has been approved with a reducing the side or the front yard setback from 25 feet to 19 feet, but only 20 feet wide because of the extension of the garage will only take up a small portion of the setback. There are no utilities in the area, so. it will
Thank you,
not
Rose.
affect me.
So when that stuff goes to BZA, it doesn't come to us after that?
No, it's-
BZA is built to deal with that
Yeah, it's
as a
done.
separate body?
And if there's an appeal, it goes straight to district court.
It doesn't come to us on appeal?
Nope, it goes to district court.
So you don't want me even taking time?
No. I'm educating maybe some of the newer people that aren't aware of what BZA is or does. The Board of Zoning Appeals is our mechanism to deal with that smaller thing instead of bringing it to the overall body. And it's you and who else, Bob?
Bill Harris, Bruce Floyd, Patty Cox, and I always get his name wrong. Oh my lord, he's gonna kill me.
David Stroud?
David Stroud, thank you.
But you're our representative for that, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, any other committee updates? Any off-agenda items? Item 9.
Move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion second to adjourn, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, everybody.